Today's subject is ego and the Bhagawad Geeta. While everyone condemns the ego, while everyone has something to say how bad it is, few people really understand what ego really means. In the English language, for example, there are two differences between egoism and egotism. Egotism is to have an extraordinarily inflated idea of oneself, whereas egoism is to be centered around self. So, what is that self? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Bhumi apo nalo vayu tham mano buddhi revacha ahankara itiyam me bhinna prakriti ishtada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and one's false ego or ego. All these are part of my inferior energies. It really means that if you've been following my lectures so far, Purush impregnates Mahat, which is the totality of Prakriti. And on impregnating the totality of Prakriti, Purush produces innumerable tiny Purushas encased by a covering of Prakriti. So we are part Prakriti and we are part Purush. And what keeps us here in the cycle of birth and death, of old age, suffering, and this repeated cycle is because we are unable to unite with the Supreme Purush because we falsely believe that we are this Prakriti. Which Prakriti? This Prakriti described herein in the verse where I have explained from the Bhagavad Gita. Bhumi, earth, water, Bhumi apo nalo vayur kam mano buddhi revacha ahankara ityam me bhinna prakriti ashtada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. These form my inferior energies. And then Krishna goes on to say that aparayam itastva anyam prakritim vidhi me param jiva bhutam mahabhavo yayedam dharyate jagat. But you indeed are part of my superior energy. You are not Prakriti. You are Purush. And this Purush that you are is sustaining and maintaining creation. This Prakriti, as long as we believe that we are this Prakriti, that we believe that we are this mind, intellect, we believe that we are this person with this name, with this gender, with this uh, place of birth of this particular community, and we have these are my qualifications. I am so intelligent. I have such a wonderful mind, and so on and so forth. All this makes up your sense of self. And your identification with this ahankar is the main cause of rebirth. You have to realize that you are not Prakriti, but you are indeed a Purusha. And once you realize that you are Purush, from a perspective of a normal person in the material world, you will realize that you are nothing. You are nothing because the spirit, according to the Bhagavad Gita, according to Krishna, according to the Vedas, the spirit is nothing material. It's impossible to define it. It's impossible to describe it. It is impossible to speak of it. It's ineffable. It is even impossible to imagine it. It is inconceivable. It is achintya. Therefore, what lies beyond Prakriti for all practical purposes is nothing. You cannot say, I am the all pervading Brahman. You will say, I am nothing. So, therefore, you must understand that this Prakriti is attached to the Purush through a single link. And that single link that attaches Purush to Prakriti is this link of Prakriti which we call as Ahankara. And this Ahankara befuddles us. It makes fools of us. It bewilders us. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashah ahankara vimud atma kartaham iti manyate. Everything Krishna says is done by Prakriti. But the foolish jiva, the foolish purush, encased in this Prakriti, foolishly imagines he is the doer. So what is the consequence? Karya karanam kartritve hetur prakriti uchyate purusha sukha dukhanam bhoktritva hetur uchyate. Indeed, Krishna points out, all activity in this world is performed by Prakriti. But the foolish Purush, the infinitesimal Purush, he imagines he is the doer. And because he imagines he is the doer, he enjoys and suffers the consequences and the fruits of the work that is being done. And indeed, as this Purush attached to this Ahankar, carries with him from one birth to another his subtle body, which has been modified in his life. What subtle body? This Mano Buddhir Ahankar. This Mano Buddhir Ahankar is carried by this Purush from one gross body to another. It is carried from one gross body to another simply because of its attachment to Ahankar. And as your Ahankar changes, as your subtle body changes in this life, the next body is being prepared for you. So that when you leave this body, the next body will be prepared and ready for you. And if you have performed sinful deeds, if your Ahankar has become warped and twisted and degenerate, you will get a similar wound. Asurim yonim apanam mudho janmani janmani. You will get the womb of an asura. You will get the womb of a demon. Birth after birth after birth. Depending on how you have acted in this world, how your subtle body has become transformed, and that will depend largely on whether you allow the ahankar to take over or you allow the supreme spirit to take over. In the Bhagawad Geeta, Krishna says, Mamaya jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana mana shasta indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. Krishna says very, very clearly that your ahankar is the source of all your problems. And this problems created by your ahankar cause all your suffering. So let us look at it a little from a neuroscience prism, so you can understand what really goes on in the minds, even from a material perspective. From the moment of your birth, this is for full-term babies, not for premature babies, because this does not kick in till full-term, even for premature babies. In this full-term baby, as soon as it is born, a circuit in the brain, the electrical activity in the brain in the form of a circuit takes over. And that circuit in the brain which takes over is called the default mode. Some call it the social cognition mode. It is constantly receiving input from the world and trying to figure out who am I and how do I live within this world. In fact, what it is doing moment by moment is creating a sense of self. Your ahankar is being built moment by moment by a pre-programmed force which kicks in as an electrical circuit within the brain, which is called the default mode. Why is it called default mode? It's called the default mode because when you are not working or doing something constructive, the mind, the brain automatically slips into this default mode because it starts thinking about I, me, myself. And it starts wondering, why did this happen? Why did that happen? How should I behave next? What should I do? So in fact, your brain is structured to create your ahankar or your ego. And not only is the prakriti of your brain structured to create the prakriti of your ahankar, but having created the prakriti of your ahankar, it is constantly figuring out how to repair this ahankar, how to plan for this ahankar ahead, how to make sense of what has happened to this ahankar in the past. Therefore, this ahankar is the responsible for this constant chatter within your mind. Your constant chatter within your mind is the result of this ahankar. Or rather, the ahankar is the result of the constant chatter within. And it's the cause of suffering, tremendous suffering. Because lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, madness, all of them arise from this ahankara. All of these arise from the ahankara. So lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, right? All of them come from your ahankara. And what comes from Purush? From Purush comes the recognition of unity of everything around you. So Purush brings about love. Purush brings about a sense of oneness with creation. Whereas the Prakriti brings you divisiveness, it brings you the vision of seeing many where there is really one. Whereas the vision of the Purush is to see one where your eyes will see many. So your ahankar is really a sense of self, and it is formed not only by your brain but also by the inputs to your brain. So all your social interactions give you feedback to your brain, and your brain then constructs your sense of self according to the feedback that you have received. So it is not that you are just this person with this name and this gender and this body, but also you will discover that because of your interactions with your spouse, you may be a husband or a wife. Because of your interactions with your parents, you may be a son or a daughter. Because of your interactions with your grandparents, you may be a grandson or a granddaughter. Because of your interactions with your children, you may be a father or a mother. And thus, you have many identities within oneself. Of course, there are some psychologists who call this many selves, but I prefer to call it many identities in oneself. And these many identities in oneself help you to interact with the world according to how the world chooses to interact with you. But to support that position, you may have to jockey, you may have to politic, you may indeed have to play politics, and indeed you may have to use your wile and your guile so that you can maintain that position which you have in the eyes of that person or persons with whom you interact, and try to promote that position. When you don't have a correct impression of reality, and in fact, you have an inflated opinion of the role that you are playing, then your sense of self is overinflated. So this overinflated sense of self is called egotism. Whereas if your life is centered around this sense of self, it is called egoism. When you abandon the sense of self in your thoughts, and I'll tell you how, your sense of self diminishes. It becomes weakened. It becomes attenuated. How is that? First of all, this constant chatter in your mind, which we call as a default mode network, is known as a task negative network. It goes on when you're doing nothing. But when you're working, when you're engaged in tasks, when you are constantly engaged in fulfilling the purpose of your creation by performing your activity, not for a reward for this ego or self, not because you want to elevate or receive some fruit for the self, but you are truly absorbed in that work in a spirit of devotion and dedication. Then this task positive network, which replaces the task negative network, then automatically diminishes thoughts of self and thoughts of ahankar, and ahankar automatically becomes less, less, less. A classical method which is found in all the religions is chanting the Lord's name or chanting prayers. And by doing that, what really happens is that you become absorbed in that prayer, you become absorbed in the name of the Lord that you are chanting, and because of that, you stop thinking of self. It's a very powerful method to remember God and forget self. Because by remembering God and forgetting self, the chatter in your head ceases. The ahankar diminishes, becomes weakened, becomes attenuated. From becoming self-centered or egoistical, you become more selfless. And as you become more selfless, you become more dear to those who are around you. You become more precious to those who are around you. Because a selfless person working to add value to the world and add value to people around him is very difficult to find. And one who does this selflessly is indeed a representative of God. The goal of Buddhism, center of Buddhism, is based on the fact that dissolution of this ego leads to enlightenment. They call it anatta. Anatta means there is no self. And the realization that this self is a mental construct, the realization that this ahankar is a virtual ahankar, and that the minute you turn off your computer, virtual things vanish. So also when you turn off this default mode over a period of time, your sense of self also vanishes. So of course, because Buddhism is a selfishly salvation-centric, non-violent, external renunciatory religion, you have to, in Buddhism, abandon the world. And having abandoned the world, abandon everybody who contributes to your sense of self. That is all your relationships, all your relations, your family, your society. And move along until your sense of self is gradually by attrition diminished and then extinguished. And this extinction of this ahankar is will make you a bodhi. According to the Vedas, according to the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, you do not ever become nothing It just feels like nothing. Because you then become the Purusha, then you realize that you are the soul. And when you realize that you are the soul, because the soul is ineffable, you can't speak of it, because it is inconceivable, it is achintya. You think that you have attained a state of being nothing, but in actual fact, the Bhagavad Gita says that you have become one with the spirit. And this extinguishing of the ahankar will lead to the Brahma Bhuta platform. Brahma Bhuta prasannatma na sochati na kankshati samah sarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labate param. When you attain this platform of becoming spirit, of becoming this Purush, this all-pervading Purush known as Brahman, then you have no hankering and you have no lamentation. You don't desire anything, nor are you repenting for anything. And not only are you beyond hankering and lamentation, but you look upon all living entities with equal vision. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hastini Shuni Chaiva Swapake Cha Pandita Samadarshinaha. Having attained this supreme knowledge, you will see everyone with equal vision. A Brahmin, a cow, an elephant, a dog eater. You look at all of them with equal vision. And having done all this, he says, Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. And you will attain Parabhakti, you will attain unmotivated, uninterrupted love of God. And thus you will remain in the world, continuing to work to the best of your abilities, fulfilling the purpose of your creation, your mind absorbed in God, remembering God and forgetting the sense of self. But even though you might believe that you have extinguished the sense of self, the truth is it is dormant and always ready to be awakened. So whatever God gives us is not useless. It is only bad when it is misused. For example, in Switzerland, where people all have to do military service, every adult male has a rifle in his home. But you don't hear of all these shootings and killings and madness of gun violence. But on the other hand, if you go to the United States, you will find that people who have guns, not all of them, but some of them, express their madness through guns. Those who wish to commit suicide, half of them use guns. Children steal guns when they are bullied and they go around killing their classmates. Indeed, it is not guns that are the problem. It is how you use them and who uses them and when they use them. Similarly, the ego is given to you for your self-protection. It is given to you so that no one will rob you, no one will steal from you, so that you may take care of yourself. But it is to be used only in the protection of self. Perhaps when you're signing a legal contract, maybe when you're signing an employment contract. But indeed, when you're working throughout most of your life, your gun should remain on its shelf. This ahankar, this ego must remain on the shelf and must not be pulled out and made the center of your life. If it becomes the center of your life, it will lead to the destruction of your life. If you become self-centered, then you will have great difficulty maintaining any human relationship. Indeed, the first step for us, at least as adults, is that we learn to center ourselves not on self, but as we identify ourselves at least with our family. And then we expand in expanding circles of identification. Ultimately, we identify with the universe. So, ahankar is the sense of self, and we seek to become selfless because to become selfless is to become free from suffering, become free from the cycle of birth and death. And when you leave this body, your subtle body, which is connected to your soul by your ahankar, can be cast off because the shackles are weak or even extinct. And when you throw off the ahankar, the soul moves back to God. And the gross matter, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, go to earth, water, fire, air, and ether. The rest of the subtle prakriti goes to the Mahat, and the soul moves back to God. That is the result of learning to extinguish, to transcend, to rise beyond this ego and live a selfless life, remembering God and forgetting self. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask me. No questions, no queries from anyone? Right. Hari Om, Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna.